Welcome to the Powell-Liberty Historical Society streaming program. This is our first time to try this. Since we're living in a crazy time in the middle of a pandemic, we're unable to meet face-to-face for a while, so we're trying the streaming option. We have pre-recorded this October program, so we will not be able to take your questions and comments live, but you can go to the comment section, question and comment section on the link, and we'll try to get an answer for you and relay the information to Linda, our speaker. I think that's all the nuts and bolts. First of all, I guess it's time to introduce Linda Foster. Some of you may remember her from last fall. She did a program on the World War II letters home from her family. And I'm happy to say that she brought today some books that are actually published now, the letters that she presented to us at that program. So for those of you who were here, I'm sorry we're not here in person so that you could see these. They're really, very nice. Today, however, Linda is going to talk to us about children's literature, which is important to me. I just have always loved children's books, even as an adult. So Linda's going to share with us the story behind the stories. Linda comes to us from Worthington. She's a longtime Worthington resident, an Ohio native, retired teacher, and a history buff. So we look forward to hearing about these teenage super sleuths. Okay, Linda.
Well, thank you, Linda, and it's fun to be back. And so we'll just start with this serious, and that's my little play on words because these are a series of books about reading, and I have to get my grandchildren in there a little bit. So, okay, as a child, now there are some people here, and I'm going to ask them, as a child, what books did you read?
I read Charlotte's Web. I love that. And I read Bobbsey Twins.
And Bobbsey Twins.
Along lots of others.
Okay.
Bobbsey Twins also.
Okay.
Oh wow, I'm trying to remember. There was. I regret to say there probably wasn't as much reading in my family, and I don't remember series. So let me think about some child, some girl, and a book about a turtle. That's where I am right now.
Okay.
I read a lot of golden books too.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Well, one of my favorite books as a child was Little Women and Little Men. And these were kind of a first series, and this was my copy of Little Women, and they've jazzed it up a little bit with the cover. And part of the reason that I really was attracted to these is they're written by Louisa May Alcott, and my middle name is Louisa. So that was my connection. Well, did any of you ever read The Rover Boys? Okay. It was written by Edward Stratemeyer, but he wrote it under the pseudonym of Arthur M. Winfield. And you're going to learn more about him as we go on, so remember that name. These were published from 1899 to 1926. And he wrote all of this series, and that's an important thing to remember. Over 3 million copies have been sold, and he always included a preface thanking the readers and introducing other books. He was quite a marketing expert. He really did a great job with that. The Rover Boy stories Well, there were 3 brothers, and they were just their activities and adventures, but they had the distinction of being the most high-handed and obnoxious series book heroes ever. The stories often incorporated the latest technology. And starting in volume 21 in 1917, it included the adventures of the sons of the original Rover Boys. So, whoops. Well, there. So you said you read the Bobbsey twins.
Yes.
Okay. And they were published from 1904 to 1974. They had quite a longevity. But what they did was this would have been an earlier version. Then during the war, they accommodated, and they were written, there's a comment in the front that it says they followed the guidelines used for the war. The other thing they did was they reduced the size of the book and the type of paper used during the war. Then in 1960, they made some changes and brought them up to date so that to appeal to the more modern students and children. Now you see that Lillian Garris was the author of some of the Bobbsey twins. And it says that they were written by Laura Lee Hope, which there were many Laura Lees. So, well, the Bobbsey twins, it was 2 sets of fraternal twins from upper middle class families. Nan and Bert are 8, Flossie and Freddie are 4. It started out that they had the children age through the series, but then they realized, well, we're going to run out of things for them to do, and they're going to be too old. So they stopped at ages 12 and 6. They believe that Edward Stratemeyer had written the first volume, and it's just mainly a string of adventures until the Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew came along. Did anybody read Honey Bunch? Honey Bunch was one of the ones that I read. And here's Honey Bunch. And Josephine Lawrence was one of the authors of Honey Bunch, and she received $100 per manuscript. And these were published from 1923 to 1955. And this was a very, very popular series. And I just love this description of Honey Bunch. She was a dainty, thoughtful little girl in fortunate circumstances. And now they're looking at the market for younger children. Up until about 1900, very few books were written for children, and Stratemeyer figured out that he would target children as his audience. And so that was how these series developed. He had a formula, and you started out with a foundational volume, and then she had adventures at home, and then she expanded to trips and outings. Well, did any of you read the Hardy Boys? All right. Well, Leslie McFarlane was the ghostwriter for the Hardy Boys from 1927 to 46. But the Hardy Boys were published from 1927 to 74, and they were another one that they revised the old copies to bring them up to date. And also, my dad read our X-Boys on the Big Bison Trail, and I know this because his name's in it. And Leslie McFarlane also helped write this series. So he got around. The Hardy Boys were detective novels, and Stratemeyer figured out that mysteries and detective stories were becoming popular for adults, so he figured that children would like them. And so he contacted Leslie McFarlane, and he gave him an outline for the new series. Stratemeyer would do the plot outline for all of the books and then farm them out to all of his ghostwriters. McFarlane wrote the first 22 under the name of Franklin W. Dixon. And this series tells the adventures of teen brothers Frank and Joe Hardy in their fight against crime. How many of you read Nancy Drew? Well, she was published from 1930 to 2003, and I think they were recently making a new movie of Nancy Drew. And I know there are Hardy Boys movies and Nancy Drew movies. And the author for this was paid $125 to write the first Nancy Drew. And she was one of 28 Nancy Drew authors. Yes. But Mildred Benson was a little different. She felt girls could do the same thing as boys. She was tired of namby-pamby girls in books, so she made Nancy feisty and independent. And the publishers played a huge role in the success of Nancy Drew with their marketing strategies. And one thing they would do is on the book jacket, oh, here's Nancy Drew. They'd have this. Inside, they would have the list of the books so that you knew which book to get next. But then on the back flap, it would talk about another series and the books in that series. And then on the back, another series, and give a little advertising for that. So they were marketing all the time. And Nancy endured through the Depression and World War II. And that was thanks to Stratemeyer's daughters, because they worked at keeping her up to date. Did any of you read Judy Bolton? All right. She was kind of a competitor of Nancy Drew. But the unique thing about Judy Bolton was Margaret Sutton wrote all 38 of the Judy Bolton stories. Judy Bolton was published from 1932 to 1967. And these books were written before Nancy Drew, but she couldn't get them published. Yes. The other unique thing is Judy ages through the series, and she even gets married. The editors didn't like that idea, but Sutton was adamant, and she got her way on that. Many of the stories are based on actual events. Judy also has friends from all levels of society. And if you look at Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys, they are not. In fact, sometimes they've been criticized for the treatment of minorities and things like that. Judy is interested in social issues, and she seemed more like a real person because she wasn't perfect. And some people thought she was a stronger role model than Nancy Drew, but she was canceled after volume 38. Nancy Drew won. So now what do all of these books have in common? Well, Edward Stratemeyer. He was quite a marketing genius and quite a busy fellow. Born in 1862 in Elizabeth, New Jersey, and died in 1930. He worked as a store clerk, but he wrote on the side, and he imitated the style of Horatio Alger and other adventure writers. They think he wrote more than 1,300 books himself, which to me is absolutely amazing. But he started the Stratemeyer Literary Syndicate in 1906, and he was the first book packager to target books for children. It sold over 500 million books, and it was run by his daughters after his death. So what was his secret of success? Whoops. Well, find the right audience, and he chose children. Decide what made reading attractive to the audience. Series of entertaining stories that give thrill and feeling grown up. And they wanted the books themselves to look like adult books. Produce the books in an efficient assembly line manner to maximize their popularity and make a profit. Deal with several publishers and publish books under a number of pseudonyms, which he controlled. Yes. Hire ghostwriters to follow his plot outlines. They were priced at 50 cents. And think of these series that made it through World War I, the Depression, and even through World War II. It's kind of amazing that he could do that. Also, at the end of the book, it kind of gives a little idea of what's going to happen in the next book. There's a couple paragraphs that will say something to lead you to the next book. Keep the syndicate in the background. Many people didn't know that all of these books were written by numerous authors. And he specialized in mystery series, and that began in 1911. And in the 50s, revised the stories to keep them updated. And in the Bobbsey twins, they were able to revise about 20 of them, but there were 16 of them that they were so dated that it was impossible to keep the storyline and bring them up to date. And then they went into paperback. Well, somebody's got to criticize them, the syndicate, so many of the characters lead perfect lives. And we know everything isn't perfect, and not everybody is well-to-do. The roles for each sex were pretty clearly laid out. Nancy Drew might have been feisty and everything, but she always had her boyfriend to help her out and to do the heavy lifting. Stereotypes of good and evil, and the plots tend to follow a formula. But it presented two standards for females: adventure versus domesticity. And girls usually needed a male friend to help. Poor depiction of minority groups, and some of the language had to be revised in different books because of the wording. And glamorized certain careers: nursing, flight attendant, newspaper reporter. Here's the Beverly Gray series, that she's a reporter. And here's the Cherry Ames series. She was a nurse. And flight attendants, so people were concerned that they made those look too glamorous. Also, when I started to do my research, I couldn't believe the number of series that I found. So I had to narrow it down. I mean, these are the ones with 12 or more volumes. There's some with less than 12. There's some from other countries. So there's a lot out there. So now you should be experts. What do you think it takes to be a good sleuth? What characteristics would a good sleuth have, do you think?
Observant.
I'm sorry?
Observant.
Observant, okay.
Curious about detail.
Okay, curious. Anything else?
Intuition and experience.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Confidence, maybe.
Confident. Asks good questions.
Yeah.
Willing to think outside the box, maybe. Okay. Well, let's see if you can be a good sleuth. So, the scenario is the thieves broke into Rick's house and stole everything except for 2 $100 bills carelessly left in plain view. Why did they leave them behind? So I'm going to have you ask me some questions that I can answer with a yes or no answer, and we'll see if we can solve this mystery. And maybe you've seen this before, but we'll see.
Were other things missing?
Yes.
Oh yeah, it says everything.
They stole everything. Gosh.
Yeah.
Perhaps they were not human thieves. Or that's the question. Were they human thieves?
Yes.
Okay.
But that is a very good question.
Yeah.
You are expanding your thinking and thinking outside the box, like a good detective.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, sometimes words can be interpreted in a variety of ways. Think about any words in there that could be interpreted in various ways.
We're not very good.
Well, what's the critical thing that's going on in here?
They broke into the house.
Okay. But there's something that's unusual.
If they left the $100 bills,
Okay, they left these 2 $100 bills.
that's gotta be a clue.
That's right. That is definitely a clue.
Maybe they determined that they were counterfeit and they weren't going to be useful to them.
Okay.
Does that need to be a question?
It needs to be a question.
Were
Yes.
they counterfeit?
No. But you're thinking. You're expanding your thinking.
More questions, huh?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. See, that everybody wants to jump to the conclusion. And so, and if you were going to write a mystery, you'd have to lead people on and get them thinking outside the box.
Were they looking for something specific?
No. Good question.
The word everything. What does that include? Everything. Furniture, food, jewelry. What does the word everything include? That's not a yes, no question.
Yeah, correct. Let's just take everything as everything. Just think that everything that they could pick up and carry, everything that was of value.
Okay.
Let's think of it that way.
Well, carelessly is an interesting word because $100 bills that were in plain view matched with carelessly. Is carelessly a leading clue?
No, no.
Okay.
Hmm.
But look at the word before it.
Yeah.
Bills.
Mhm. Can that be interpreted in other ways?
They didn't want to have to pay for those $100 bills.
Oh,
Say that again.
Maybe bills.
They didn't want to have to pay for those two $100 bills.
No, but
So rather than $100 bill that we're thinking about, it's a bill for $100.
That's right.
correct. Like an electric bill
Yeah.
or the gas bill.
Right.
Okay. So I think you will make great super sleuths.
I think you got it.
So,
Okay.
and that concludes the presentation. So, thank you.
Thank you, Linda.
Thank you.
That was good.
Do you have any questions?
I read some of the Cherry Ames series. I wanted to be a nurse from a very young age, so that was fun to read. And not too many years ago, plenty, but at I think the Hartford Fair, they had a lot of antiques and whatever in a little shed. And the Cherry Ames series was there, so I bought it. And just recently got rid of it as I'm beginning to clean out a little bit. But it just brought back memories. And so I bought this old series.
And wasn't there a TV show, Cherry Ames?
Oh my, is there?
It runs in my mind that there was.
When? Like
It was
early in TV history?
early in
the 50s or so? Or
maybe 60s,
60s? Oh, I'm not sure.
late 50s, maybe.
Maybe.
I'll have to try to research that. So,
That's good.
Linda, do you know where people generally bought their books in the early parts of the first half of the 1900s? A lot of these being printed.
I'm trying to think where we were to buy books.
Is it the 5 and 10?
Probably.
And then I know grocery stores had golden books.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I remember that my mother was happy when I was old enough that I could sit and read the books while she was shopping and didn't have to buy them.
Yeah.
Well, they were certainly cheap enough at 50
Yeah.
cents a piece.
Well,
I mean, the books, the whole book.
Mhm.
My goodness.
I think you can still get those little golden books.
Oh,
when
yeah.
I was shopping.
And there's some of them that are the same stories. They
Are they?
produced,
Yeah.
So something else that in 1914, scouting kind of came to the United States, and so they had scouting series also. And of course, Stratemeyer jumped right on that.
He certainly was on to something big, wasn't he?
Yeah, I didn't know his name, so I Googled him yesterday. Were you all familiar with him?
No.
Yeah.
Well, he never used his name. So
Right,
it's like-
So he was quite a marketing entrepreneur, whatever. Yes.
When you consider that before television and even a gift through the Depression, books were the thing that you gave kids at Christmas and their birthdays and were revered by the kids.
Mhm.
So there was a lot of reading.
Yeah. One of the other things that they did was they got rid of the dust jacket
Yeah.
in the later versions. And you see how they made them all look alike.
Uh-huh.
Here's, and they were very distinctive.
The Bobbsey twin books that I read were my sister's, who's 9 years older. So sort of passed down to me.
So, and the early ones, Bob's doings were this.
Yeah, that's what
So, but trying to see which one had. They had a specific thing in the front that said it was printed with the guidelines of the, the War Department or the.
Oh, that was a question I had.
Yeah.
Were you talking about World War I, since many of them started that early, or were you talking about World War II?
I think it was World War II.
Okay.
I can't find the one that had that in, but I don't know. I can't find it now, but
Are your,
I had it marked and my little slips came off. So
are your grandkids at all interested in reading any of these old books? Probably
no,
They're
they
not.
want more
Yeah,
action.
more
They like the
Yeah, that would be my guess.
well, we started with picture books. I mean, and what picture books did you have as a child? Did you have any other than golden books?
Golden books, for sure, yeah. No, I don't know.
That one about the turtle, I remember, it was a great big book. Not thick, but it was, color paintings or something that a friend of my mother's gave to my brother and me.
I had a very large book that had some colored pictures that went along with the stories, and I think they were like Aesop fables. And it was that beautiful illustration. It's kind of, I can't think of her name, but I think it came from England, Britain, and just gorgeous artistic work, and the color, just was
Kate Greenway.
Yes, I think maybe it was Kate Greenway. And still have that book. My brother scribbled on it and did some cutting on it, but it is a favorite. And it was not just Aesop fables, because I remember there was the Christmas story was in it, and a little bit of a Bible section, I guess I'd say.
So they were more educational than.
Well, not
And
necessarily educational, but definitely directed to children. And just loved that book.
So,
Still in the vein.
because I remember the Pokey Little Puppy, which I think is a golden book.
Yeah.
Yes, I think it is.
And that's one of the first picture books I remember.
When
So,
I was in college, working on my master's, the course I took was children's literature. And looking at it from an adult point of view, I loved that course. So I read a lot of these old books, like Charlotte's Web and
yeah, all the award-winning
Freddie
books.
Freddie the Leaf. And, anyway, it was fun. It was
Yeah.
an interesting course.
So, but children's literature's come a long way since these series.
Yes, that's for sure.
So, and it addresses a lot of issues now, and particularly young teen, adult, preteen, a lot of issues and things like that.
When we read the series, we read to our girls and our son later on, were the Laura Ingalls Wilder Little House series. That was a biggie. And then we actually then went to Missouri to her final home and on a vacation. And of course the, can't say it, Tom Sawyer books and those kind of things, those we loved.
Yeah. So, and I read horse books and dog books and
Black Beauty.
yeah, everybody seems to have read Black Beauty and Heidi. Did you read
Yes.
Heidi?
Yes.
Yeah, those are the two that come to mind for most people. And then Little Women, I think, is another one. Those seem to be the three that
Did you see the movie a couple of years ago?
Yeah, well, and it's, what, was that the fourth
Yeah, something like
movie
that.
of it? Yeah, so, but a lot of people don't realize she wrote other books, Little Men, Eight Cousins, Joe's Boys.
Joe's Boys.
Yeah, Joe's Boys. Yeah.
Mhm.
No, I wasn't aware.
So,
In the 50s, when I was in the 5th grade, we had a teacher who was big on getting us interested in books. And our school was too poor to have a library of its own. So she got permission for us to we all baked brownies and cookies, and at lunchtime would sell them. And our class made enough money to go to a bookstore and buy books. And she took us to Columbus downtown to a bookstore, and we were able to pick out the books that were going to be in our library. Each one of us could pick out a book, and we started our own in-room library, and we had worked towards it ourselves, and that was such
wow.
a life lesson.
Oh,
you
yeah,
know?
that's
We loved
fabulous.
that. Loved that.
That is fabulous.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Linda. This is great. I'm sorry we can't have a big live audience here, but
Yes. Well, did any of you have a bookmobile come to your?
Yes. Yes, we did.
Yeah, that was my
When
library.
they started bookmobiles.
no.
No.
Getting them.
And they parked in front of my granddad's house, and I just loved that. So, any other questions or?
Appreciate your time.
Yeah, well, you're happy to look at any of these books and check them over, and you know.
Imagine you have a huge collection. Walls and walls. Cases and cases.
She's laughing.
Not. I've been trying to divest myself of things.
That's
And-
not to be
As
embarrassed.
we all are trying to.
But these old.
Well, actually, I mean, these, what I kept were books that were my family's. You know,
Yeah.
like this was mine, and this one has, I think it has my grandmother's name in, or this has my dad's name in, and things like that. So those are the ones that I kept, and because
Yeah, they have some value.
because I also collect McGuffey readers.
Oh,
Oh.
So and actually, I had never seen the Rover Boys, and so I went out and bought a copy of the Rover Boys. And well, actually, I bought a couple of the Bobbsey twins too, and somebody gave me the Beverly Gray. And
So where do you buy those old books? Here.
antique stores. So, yeah,
Sometimes I think half-price bookstores in their vintage.
vintage.
section
Yeah,
will
yeah.
have some of those too.
And you know, there's a whole, and I didn't even get into the looking at the age of them, and do they have a book jacket, and you know, this is a different era than this, and so which is more valuable, and that whole thing. You could just do a whole study on that, and I didn't get into that. So that's and
are your kids readers?
Not
necessarily old,
I'm sorry.
not necessarily these old books, but were your two boys?
Will more than Alan, but the triplets, the picture that I started with, I mean, they are avid readers. Yes, I mean, that's what they ask for is books. And they love a series. So that series
Every
thing.
night a chapter or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And in fact,
How old are they now?
10.
10.
Because one time I was bringing them home from some function, and They had each read a different book of a series, but it was the same series. And they had their own little book club discussing the book that they had read and what was going on in it. And one would say, "Oh, don't tell me too much. I want to read that." You know, I mean, it was just hysterical.
Are they Harry Potter fans?
Not a lot, but I'm trying to think now. There have been a lot of different series. You know, that Diary of a Wimpy Kid and the Notebook of Doom series, which was an early series that it was an easier, a lot of more pictures in it. That was probably the first series that they got that, and there were like, I don't know, 15 in it, and they loved those and could hardly wait to get, and they could tell you everything that happened in each one, and so.
Are you familiar with the fairly newer series of Dear America that are historical books, and they'll take a person and say this person was, this girl was on the Titanic, or this girl was an Indian, Native American Indian, and they're a fairly new series.
Now, I'm familiar with the I Survived series.
Yeah, I don't know.
But that's because, and it's like, you know, the sinking of the Titanic and the bombing of Pearl Harbor and, you know, historical
These
events.
are children and to interest children in history.
Well, the I Survived is children in history too. Yeah. So it's hard to keep up with all of them. I mean, it's so amazing.
I bought for my father when he was in his late 80s, early 90s, whatever, the Black Beauty series. He was older and not able to concentrate on anything very technical, or, you know, I just thought that might be good. And he loved reading all those old stories, and he always liked horses. So he enjoyed reading those in his 80s.
Well, this presentation, Linda knows, is an offshoot or a result of I volunteer at Parkside Assisted Living, and once a month I would do a presentation, and it was to replace their book club because people would forget to read the book, or they read the book and forget it, or, you know. And so, and I based it on children's books, picture books. And so one day, one of the residents that came to the presentation said, "Well, do you take requests?" She said, I'm a Judy Bolton fan. Well, I didn't know who Judy Bolton was at all. And she said, I wondered if you would do, and so this is the result of that. So, and the big thing is Judy Bolton was the only one that was not a Stratemeyer Syndicate book. So, and you saw what Stratemeyer did to her. Canceled her. Yeah. So, but yeah.
That's great.
Okay, well, thank you. This was fun, and I hope it wasn't too garbled and whatever.
No, it was good.
So.